Welcome to EJH British Cars. Well, today we get to do a little more cutting and welding. Great joy. I started yesterday on getting doors prepped for paint, and I took apart the passenger door, and the bottom of the inside door frame, for the lack of a better term, is just lace. It's awful. And there's a couple of holes in the skin, but I think I can probably fix them if I can disconnect that lower bit of the door without mucking everything up. And I don't know whether I can do that or not either, because it's like folded over like a regular door skin, and it's got 4 or 5 welds along the perimeter, and we've still got to cut it out of the door. I just need to replace the bottom piece without mucking up the sides. So I've not done anything quite like that before, so I'm going to go start on that and see if I can do it. Can get new door skins. They're not crazy expensive. I think they're about 170 bucks a piece, plus freight, of course. But I think I can save the passenger door, or the driver's door. I think the bottom is just too mucked up. The rust where it's folded in on itself is really bad. So anyway, let's get started and see what happens. So here's the door. Actually cleaned up pretty good. And we do have this line of holes. This is right where the bottom edge of the door frame meets. This is folded over here. But I think I could probably just put a piece of steel behind that and weld it up, and I think it'd be okay. The door itself, it's got a few, there's kind of a low spot right there. That's not too bad overall. But the big problem is right here. There are just a million holes, and of course this tin is thin. So these spaced round holes, they're supposed to be there. Those are the drain holes for the bottom, but there must have been some gunk in the bottom of the door. It just kept the water in it. And, you know, of course, being no top on it for years, it just sat there and was soaked. There had been quite a bit of crash damage on this door too. I was really surprised that as smooth as that is, these hinge mounts were awful. So I've already pushed this out a lot. This hinge, the flat was actually bent. That piece that goes like this, it's bent about 3/16 of an arch. And you can see where it's pushed in. There's a ridge there, and that's just flat. So anyway, what I'm going to try and do today is get rid of these little welds in the corners. This is just lapped right here on both sides, so that'll fold down. Going to need to cut it here, and then I'm probably going to need to cut it here somehow, and then push this piece out, hopefully. So I'm going to get the grinder out and grind these welds. There's a couple along here too, which stabilizes the door. So I got the first bit done. So there were several spot welds. And there was just probably a gas weld here. Same thing on this side. You can see that there's at least half a dozen in this 1.5 square inch area. Cut that. I ground, well, this actually had a rust hole here, so then I just used this air saw to go down to there. This side was solid, so I used the grinder just to start a hole and ground down to there. Now what I think I'm going to do, I'll take the air saw and I'm going to cut right like that, just in line with that corner. As you can see, that's welded there as well. But all I need to do is be able to roll this back. So that's my next step. So I've got that loose now. I peeled away there and here. And I see what's left that's holding it is this seam. So what I want to do now, this is actually a spot weld chisel. I want to drive it down in there a little bit, like that. See if I can't open that seam up a little bit, so that we should be able, hopefully, get it out. I did grind these welds, but they're still holding to some extent. So we'll see as we go along. We got it out. And it was plenty rusty. Look at that edge. Didn't hardly see that. And this is all pretty grody here, but I think we can save it. Of course, I'll wire brush it. And it's getting late in the day, so I think I'll wire brush it, and I'm going to put some rust prep on there. And then we'll start tomorrow, see if we can't bend a new piece up. Of course, we'll grind off what's left of these spot welds here and there. This is where I made my side cut, so I had to cut through this piece and also this piece, because this piece actually goes further to here. I think this was one piece of metal that they cut here and then folded, and I'll grind these ends flat, and I will probably, when I make my new piece, I'll probably leave it so there's a bit of a tang that can fold up into there, and then we can spot weld that back in, and I think that'll be good. Anyway, I'll get that cleaned up with a wire brush and call it a day. I've made my two pieces up, and they're just loosely fitting in the door, so I did it in 2 halves because my brake isn't big enough to do them all at once, and to be honest, I don't know how you would feed them in as one piece because of the way they slot in. So this is just the joint I made, and of course that's adjustable, but here's the end. So this edge goes under here, this falls along this edge. I put this tab on, which is not in the original because it was one piece. That'll go here, and then I'll spot weld that. And then this piece goes over there, and this piece is square, whereas the old one was cut at an angle. I didn't see any point in doing it at an angle. I didn't see any real big advantage. And of course, this is the mirror image of that. Also, that's spot welds. Spot welded a piece of steel in there because this is pretty thin, so that will buff it up a lot. And I'll be able to weld in the holes on the sides. So you can see the rings are the spot welds, but you can see all the little holes that are here. So with that backing in there, I'll be able to MIG that in and then grind it off. And of course, it'll be a little uneven, so I'll put a thin layer of plastic in there. But this, by the time I got it out, there was a lot more rust in here than I had imagined. There's almost, because the rust really started at the top of this joint, so there's almost like a hinge here. So it actually, when I opened this flange up, remember I drove the spot weld chisel onto there and pried up. It actually, this came up, but it also put a line in here. You can kind of see a bit of it there, which follows that rust line, which is kind of like a perforated edge. But anyway, I think that'll come up all right. And of course, with that piece in there, that's a lot stronger now. So the plan is, I'll set my two pieces in and I'll clamp them up and I'll really make sure that everything fits the way that I want it to fit. Well, there's the other advantage of having that piece up there. It's going to cover that hole up. And then if everything's the way I like it, I will probably spot weld it and spot weld the center and make sure that that line is straight where the two halves come together. And after I do all that, then I'll close this edge up, which will be a little difficult because this has got 3 layers of steel in it, or 2 additional layers in it now instead of just 1. So they kind of have to remake that corner, but I don't think that'd be too bad because it's open. You know, I've got the square-faced body hammer, should do that pretty well, and also can, you know, you can use pliers on it and stuff. I'm going to have to bond to the other side anyway. So anyway, it looks like we saved this door skin. I kind of like that. I start feeling bad if I replace too much of the sheet metal. It's like, you know, just should have bought a new car. So it's nice to save some of it. And yeah, it was $170, $180 I didn't need to spend. I mean, I've spent, it's pretty late in the day on Friday now, so I started about 1. It must be at least 4 o'clock. So 3 hours to make up these pieces, because I was just going slow and making sure I got all my bends in the right direction. And I had never really had to do a critical inside bend. So you got these 2 inside bends here, and this dimension had to be pretty tight, and I wasn't quite sure when you bend where you should measure that. So basically you want to get what your inside dimension is, and that seems to work pretty well. And you also need to, when you set up your bend, when you put the clamp plate in, I don't know how well you can see this, but there's the hinge. We want to stay back about the thickness of the metal, because the metal is going to come and it's going to be trapped in there. So if you put this right to the edge, you're just really fighting yourself. So just something to think about. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get this all clamped up, and once that's all done, I'll probably let you take a look at it again. Well, there it is, spot welded in place. So we got several welds here, up onto that tab on the end. Welded the joint together, and the same thing over here. And you can see this all fits pretty tight. And then I'm going to take the MIG welder, and I'll do that seam and this seam, and making sure that this bottom doesn't move. I can actually put a little board in there. I can clamp that to hold it tight. But I'll get those MIG'd, because that's how it was originally. That's what gives it, I think, part of what gives the door its structural strength, is these pieces are moment frames, and they're spot welded, but like a MIG weld, they're a lot better and it'll look better. So that's about it for that. Of course, when I get the MIG out, we'll take care of this side too, but that won't be today. It's getting late in the day, time to pick up my toys, go in for dinner. I hope you enjoyed that. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment, and we'll see you next time.